Good morning, everyone. This is Matt Sexton with the Florida Department of Transportation's CAD office. Welcome to FDOTConnect 2023 Installation, Setup, and Configuration. This presentation was originally written for FLUG. Obviously, we did not do the presentation at FLUG. I do have this sort of clever intro that I had written because it was supposed to be pre-recorded for FLUG anyways. But that intro is going to be completely improvisational. So I guess the usual questions, the recording will be done. There will be a recording of this presentation. It will be posted on our website. I think there will be a notification sent out. It should be within the week. There will be a recording of this presentation as well as a copy of the PowerPoint that I am presenting from. So that will be available to you on our website shortly after, I believe probably in the same location that these presentations are listed. Other matter of business, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to enter those questions into the question and answer section of the webinar dialogue. We will be trying to answer those questions in real time in that dialogue. And if we have some time at the end of the presentation, I will be glad to go through and look for any unanswered questions or questions that I'd like to highlight and answer those live during the webinar. I believe that is all the administrative stuff. If you have a problem with the audio, if you can't hear, well, you probably aren't hearing me now, but if you have a problem with the audio, the best way to resolve that is to log out of GoToWebinar and log back in, because we don't have any control over the client side audio. So go ahead and log back out and log in again if you have problems with the audio. Of course, if you're hearing my voice now, then you're probably not having problems with the audio. So that's one of those things we have to figure out how to resolve at some future point. Anyways, welcome to FDOTConnect 2023 Installation, Setup, and Configuration. This course is designed to introduce FDOTConnect 2023 to CAD managers, CAD users, and IT technicians. This presentation will introduce you to the new FDOTConnect 2023 software suite for Bentley Connect Edition applications of the 2023 schema. At face value, this presentation might seem like an introductory level presentation, and it is. But in order to understand something about anything, you have to understand everything about something. I read that somewhere. It has to be true. Anyways, understanding the foundational details of installing and configuring our software is the first step to understanding everything about our software. By you will understand what FDOTConnect 2023 is, if you don't already know, how to install it, and how it should be configured, as well as how to launch FDOTConnect 2023 and do some basic troubleshooting of the configuration and of things that might happen while you're doing your designs. I'll be doing a few live demonstrations as well, giving you a tour of some valuable resources. I've got Candy and Mike Robertson here on the chat. So if you have questions, they will be assisting me with answering those questions. And like I said, at the end of the presentation, we can have a bit of question and answer and go over anything that is not part of my pre-written script. That's actually in my script, to mention the script. It's a bit meta. FDOTConnect 2023 is the CAD workspace, resources, and suite of tools created by the Florida Department of Transportation's CAD office for use with the Bentley Connect Edition applications of the 2023 schema, as I said before. These applications include quite a few of those Connect Edition applications, including Open Roads Designer, Open Bridge Modeler, Open Bridge Designer, and MicroStation Connect Edition. We released FDOTConnect 2023 earlier this year to much fanfare, and I'm pleased to say that much like FDOTConnect 10.12, 10.11, and 10.10, it can indeed also coexist with previous versions of the FDOT software and their corresponding supported versions of the Bentley Connect Edition applications, which is to say you can have FDOTConnect 2023 installed on the same machine as FDOTConnect 10.10, 10.11, and 10.12, and the corresponding software that goes with those. Your only limitation is your imagination and the amount of storage space on your machine. FDOTConnect 2023 is certified to be used with specific versions of these Connect Edition applications. And to locate that information, you can simply go to the Florida Department of Transportation's CAD office website at www.fdot.gov/CAD, CADD. Locate the software downloads page, easy to find, and select FDOTConnect 2023. At the bottom of the page, select Supported Software, and then scroll to locate the section labeled FDOTConnect 2023. I'll show you how to find that later on in the presentation. It'll be part of my live demonstrations. I'll also show you where to find the little application that is depicted in this screen capture on the slide. It will display the versions of the software that you have installed, as well as the ones that you don't have installed, and the fact that you don't have them installed. And it does include a link to that supported software page as well. Lots of ways to find that information. So let's go into installation. Before installation of the FDOTConnect 2023 and any of the supported Connect Edition applications, please read the entire installation guide, which is available on the software downloads page. This guide includes critical information to properly install and configure FDOTConnect 2023 and access the FDOT Workspace. Once you've read the installation guide, you can actually also watch my installation introduction video for FDOTConnect 2023, which is essentially a very condensed arrangement of this presentation. After watching that video, you might feel compelled to once again read the installation guide. It's a riveting piece of literature, I assure you. I would, though, also ask you to please consider the environment before printing out the installation guide, because I feel obligated to say that. There are 3 installer files located on the FDOTConnect 2023 downloads page, and we're going to talk about them. We have the Workstation installer, the Client installer, and the Server installer. I don't have any clever images on this slide, but that information is there, and it is otherwise truthful. FDOTConnect 2023 standalone workstation, of course, is that first installer that I mentioned, and it will install all of the FDOT resources, tools, and other aspects of the software locally on the workstation. That's why it's a standalone workstation. This installation is a good choice for laptops, remote workstations, CAD users who telework, or any machine that might be periodically disconnected from the site network or have to connect via a VPN. We noticed a dramatic uptick in standalone workstation installations a few months into working from home when telework and remote work increased. Even now, as we continue down that road, I'm seeing quite a few more standalone workstation installations than previously. It seems that people are enjoying having all of those resources local so that they can move around and potentially not be connected to the site network. In fact, the FDOT Central Office design usually uses a workstation installation these days, despite the fact that for years and years and years we used a client-server installation. So the installation for that workstation, FDOTConnect 2023 workstation, is fairly intuitive. First, of course, as I mentioned before, read the entire installation guide. Second, install one of the supported versions of the Bentley Connect Edition applications of the 2023 schema, such as OpenRoads Designer. And I want to correct myself from what I have written in the script here. I say install one of the supported Connect Edition applications. If you're going to have more than one application installed, like MicroStation and OpenRoads, or OpenRoads and OpenBridge, install all of the Connect Edition applications first. Don't just install one. My script does say install one, but that's to say if you're going to install more than one, install them all before you install the FDOT software. So during the installation of those Bentley Connect Edition applications, be sure to select the default options for installation. There's no need to perform any additional configuration steps during the installation like we used to. Those additional configuration steps are now performed after the installation of actually, some of them are performed during the installation automatically. But anyways, I'll discuss that later. It's important to install, like I said, the Bentley application first. And if you're installing multiple applications, do them all at once. Well, not all at once, sequentially, because Windows. Anyways, after Open Roads Designer or another Connect Edition application is installed, you can now install the FDOTConnect 2023 software. You're going to double click on that MSI installer. There's no need to force it to run as administrator like we used to. This is an MSI installer. It automatically does that. For the installation location, if you're doing a workstation, select that default location of FDOTConnect 2023, unless your site has multiple state workspaces centralized in a custom configuration folder. In that case, you're kind of on your own. Just kidding, we will give you assistance in any way we can, but it's one of those situations where we prefer you to take the default in that situation. The installer is also going to ask you for the location of your worksets folder. The workset folder is, of course, the folder in which your sets or projects are located. This is a note for all of the IT folks who manage the CAD software but might not be overly familiar with the FDOT CAD workflow. This step of the installation is really important. You can theoretically change the location of the worksets folder after the installation of the FDOT software, but it's a little bit of a pain. And you certainly don't want to have your users doing it for themselves. It involves changing environment variables and digging around in the registry. And I learned all too well back in 1998 that digging around in the registry is a great way to turn your machine into a very expensive paperweight. After completing the installation, though, locate the FDOTConnect 2023 folder on the desktop. You should notice there is an FDOT branded launch shortcut for each of the previously installed Bentley Connect Edition applications. If that's not the case, I'll address the potential troubleshooting steps later in this presentation, but it's not the software. Aside from the standalone workstation installation, FDOT also offers a client-server configuration for the FDOTConnect 2023 software. And as mentioned previously, this sort of configuration can coexist with previous versions of the FDOT software, provided that the server portion of the software is installed to a separate location and not like simply installed on top of the previous software. I assume that's something I should say for clarity. Let me know if there's any question about that. A client-server installation creates launch shortcuts on the client machine while storing the majority of the FDOT resources and workspace software on a centralized server location. So despite the uptick in standalone workstation installations for remote machines or machines that might be periodically disconnected from the server, the client-server installation is still popular for large sites where updating a CAD server would be more effective than updating each individual machine when a maintenance release is published. So that's the advantage of the client server, is that you can update all of the FDOT resources on the server rather than having to touch each individual machine when we put out a maintenance release. The client machines will need to remain connected to the site's network to access the FDOT workspace and resources. Although remote machines are able to access the resources through a VPN, remote machines will experience significant lag time if using a client-server installation. So the performance issues aren't terrible, but they're less than desirable. It involves a lot of, well, I did this and it's going to take a while, so I guess I'll take a coffee break sort of experience. That's the kind of lag you're experiencing with that. First step in performing a client-server installation is to install the FDOTConnect 2023 server file to run that server installer. You can do that by either logging into the server and running the server installer locally on the server, or by running the server installer from a machine that has access to the server. I've done this both ways, and either method works just fine. Bear in mind that if you install it from another machine that has access to the server, the uninstallation process has to be executed from that same machine, not the server. So, for example, if I had my personal machine had a map drive to a server location and I had read-write access to the server, I could run the server installation from my machine and then just point to the server to install that server installer onto the server. How many times can I say server? But then if I was going to uninstall that software from the server, I'd actually have to go from my personal machine and go to the add remove programs to do that. It's just a thing to be aware of. It's not a problem, but it's something to be aware of, especially if I were to reimage my machine and then I would not have that in my add remove programs. The simple solution to that is if you can't uninstall it from the server and you need to uninstall it from the server, you can actually just delete the folder. It's just a folder. Anyways, after you have that server installation complete, go to your client machines and follow the previous steps for installing your Bentley Connect Edition applications on the client machine, and then finally install the FDOTConnect 2023 client software on the client machine. And this is where it gets slightly more interesting. Oh, I don't have any notes for this slide. Well, that's pretty cool. I'll improvise. So anyways, I do recommend installing the FDOTConnect 2023 client software to the default installation location, as one would expect to. You will be asked for the server location. Now, this can be a server path or a mapped drive. That's just fine. Important to get it right the first time, like the worksets folder. And then, of course, just like the workstation installation, you will be asked to locate the worksets folder. And make sure you get that right the first time. That's super important because it's a pain to change later on. Oh, hey, a brief demonstration on launching and exploring FDOTConnect 2023. This is the part of the presentation where everyone is glad to see that I have my cat here on my desktop. This is Eugene, and this is the FDOTConnect 2023 folder. You can see that I have OpenRoads Designer installed. That is the only application I've installed. If I had installed MicroStation or another flavor of the Bentley Connect Edition applications, you'd see launch shortcuts for that. I want to go over a few things, just so you know. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run Workspace Doctor real quick. Pay no attention to the fact I did that. I want to bring my software back to a state where it is what it would be like after a brand new installation. So a couple things I want to show you. I am launching OpenRoads Designer. So I mentioned that you don't have to do any additional configuration steps like you did with the previous software. And I want to explain the two configuration steps that you don't have to do anymore. So the first step, you may recall you had to, during the installation of OpenRoads Designer way back in the day, you had to manually go and specify a custom configuration location during installation. You definitely don't have to do that anymore. And then there was an additional step where you'd have to run a configuration step in Workspace Doctor. And we have gotten rid of the need to do either of those. The configuration now is done through an XML file, and we write to that during the installation. So during the installation of the FDOTConnect software. So you don't have to worry about specifying any custom configuration, location, or any additional customization during installation of either your Bentley Connect Edition application or the FDOT software. Both of those are taken care of automatically. So it's just, if you take the defaults while installing both programs, it's going to turn out just fine. As long as you specify your worksets folder location during the installation and make sure it's the correct one. All right, so you launch OpenRoads Designer or your other Connect Edition application for the first time, welcome to Open Roads Designer 2023 with the FDOT 2023 Workspace. You do have to select Custom Configuration on the left. Again, it's reading from that XML file that has the information on your custom configurations. You will see your custom configuration options under the Workspace selection dropdown. As always, select FDOT. It's going to populate your Worksets folder. Mine is located at C Worksets. Yours could be somewhere else. It might be C Projects. It might be on a server somewhere. That's fantastic. You can see I have a number of Worksets available. These are all the Worksets that are available in the FDOT subfolder of my Worksets folder. I didn't actually have much planned for today, so let's do this. Let's go to my, oh, that's right. So anyways, because I ran Workspace Doctor, I don't have any recent files. That's just fine. Open up the blank file here. We do include still, for those of you who are familiar with our previous softwares, we do still include that blank file in the Workset template. Any of your Worksets that you create will include that blank file as well. So you will be able to open up the FDOT Workspace and access that. Oh, we got a great question here that I do answer. I'll answer that after I get the Workspace open and just give you all a brief tour. Okay, here's where we get into troubleshooting. So I want to point out something that I noticed a little while ago and didn't ever think to point it out to anyone as a way of troubleshooting or a thing to look for when troubleshooting. So here's where you get into the troubleshooting stuff. So if you want to look for, oh, something's going wrong with the workspace. I feel like my symbology isn't showing correctly in my files. I feel like I'm not getting all of the resources. Something isn't populating. Something weird's going on. If your designs look funky and just something feels wrong about the workspace, open up the blank file. Launch the software and open up the blank file at the root of your folder. If you find, here's where it gets weird, if you find that the F and the I don't appear correctly and don't display correctly, if one of them is missing or both of them is missing, I don't recall exactly what it is because this is loading correctly. If you find that the F and the I in this display right here is not displaying correctly, that is an indicator that the FDOT workspace is not loading fully. There's a explanation as to why that happens. It has something to do with the font file. I believe it's defaulting to a font where those letters don't show up correctly. So if you ever open up the blank file and see that those letters are missing, that indicates that the FDOT workspace has not loaded fully. If you have a situation where you feel like the resources aren't loading correctly and just something's a little bit off with your symbology or the way your line work looks, go ahead and open up that blank file and double check. That will confirm whether or not you're having a resource issue. It also might mean simply that the font isn't loading correctly. It may not mean that you're having a resource issue. But if you're having resource issues and it's not displaying, that will definitely confirm that for you. So FDOT tab, it looks very similar to the last one. We've updated some of the icons to make them look slightly differently. I do want to point out some additional troubleshooting stuff that I always like to point out. If you're not aware of the Explore directories, this is really handy for troubleshooting and for just accessing your data. So someone says, I've got this file that I'm working on, and I want to go to the location where the file is, but my Worksets folder is 5 folders deep on a server somewhere that I don't remember the, 5 or 6 word name that we named the server. I have no idea where my file actually is. So how do I get to that? Current Workset is a great little shortcut to get to that. I like to point that out because I'm all about troubleshooting, and that's going to take you right to your actual current Workset. Okay, so bear that in mind. I'm troubleshooting, and say I've got a client server installation. I have no idea where this person's FDOTConnect 2023 server is. We need to go change something on the server. this FDOTConnect 2023 is going to take you to wherever your organization's civil installation is for your resources. So if that FDOT workspace is on a server, if it's local, if it's in a custom location, it doesn't matter. It's going to read that and it's going to take you directly to that organization civil folder. It knows where it is. So that's a great way. Just on mine, clearly I have a default installation of a standalone workstation, but this does get you where you're going if you had a much more complex configuration. So it's going to read that information. Well, how does it find that information? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So let's look at Workspace Doctor real quick. Okay, two things I want to talk about because I do talk about this in my troubleshooting presentations. Before I talk about Workspace Doctor, I want to talk about Clear Crash because I love clarifying the information about Clear Crash. Clear Crash is, it launches a batch file. It's a very cleverly written batch file that closes out all of the Bentley Connect Edition applications, all of the FDOT resources, and I believe it still closes out Excel, which can get hung up sometimes. I don't remember if we changed that or not. Someone can correct me. And all that does is if you are experiencing a crash, if your software has locked up, if you are frozen and it's going to take a while before the software finally closes, and you're still worried about whether or not the software is running in the background somehow, Clear Crash is going to get rid of that. It's going to dump out of the software. It's going to make sure it's not hung up in the background. And it does it very, very quickly. So also, if you're done working for the day and it's Friday and there's 10 minutes till 5, double-clicking Clear Crash is a great way to close down your software fast so you can get out the door faster. I'm sure that's not what people use it for, but that's what Clear Crash does. What it doesn't do is it doesn't fix anything. A lot of the crashes can be caused by corruption in temporary data files, in preference files, in stuff that's in the user profile. And Clear Crash does not do anything to those. So I've heard some people say sometimes, well, I've run Clear Crash a couple times and it hasn't fixed the problem. Well, it's not going to fix the problem. It's just going to save you time when you're already crashing. So what will fix the problem is Workspace Doctor. So I used to know individually what each of these options did and specifically what problems they solved. That was probably back in V8i. The Connect Edition software has a lot more temporary data and user preference files located in a lot of different locations. So the crashes are much more complicated as far as what's causing them. So I couldn't tell you specifically what each type of problem can be solved by. So I recommend if you're going to run Workspace Doctor, go ahead and select all of the options. It used to be if you're experiencing a problem with the foundational software, like MicroStation, if you're experiencing a problem with a MicroStation tool, you could just clear the UPF because it was always the user preference file. If you're experiencing an issue with Geopack, you could just delete the Geopack resource files. In this case, a lot more files are being created that are temporary data files, so I just recommend checking all of the boxes and not trying to guess. Save you some time. So that clears out all of that. Side effect of it, as you saw, is that it takes your software back to a fresh installation look, where you have to reopen any recent files to get them on that list and then select your workspace correctly, not in that order. A couple other things Workspace Doctor has, just like the links up here for the Explore directories, we do have a link that takes you to your organization's civil folder, which is to say the place where your FDOT software is installed, whether it's a local installation or a server installation. This is handy for troubleshooting because I can right away see exactly where your installation is. I can say, okay, I can see you've got a workstation installation or a client server installation. That's a super handy display. And this is pulling it directly from the system environment variable. So I know that if I see this, this is exactly what is set in the system environment variable. And the same thing with the work sets folder. You could be working on your work sets in another location and having all things get messed up. And I can still look and say, oh, wait, that work set location is actually the environment variable specifying it in this location. I could have all my work sets in my documents folder and be opening up files there and not actually accessing that work sets folder. and I could then see, oh, that's not the right location. This is the right location right here. So another handy thing to be able to access. I mentioned previously that all of the configuration is done during the installation of the software, that you don't have to worry about configuring the software again at the end of installation. But we do have the configure button here just in case. So what this does is this locates the configuration text file where the custom configuration location variable is specified. It locates that text file, which is like 4 or 5 folders deep into the installation, and it comments out the line where the custom configuration location is specified. It comments out that line and then it writes it again. I noticed recently that I think we've changed it so it only does it once, but it used to just, every time you ran it, it would just comment it out again and write it again. So either way, if it's configured correctly, it doesn't matter if you run this configure a second time, it's not going to mess anything up. This is a perfectly safe button to press anytime. It is going to just comment out the line and then write the line again. And if your information is correct, it's going to write the correct information in there. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and hit configure. It closes out Workspace Doctor, and then I can go to Program Files, Bentley. See, I have all the software installed. Where's 2023? Oh wait, it's under Program Data, I think. Nope, it's not. See, this is why we put the button there. It makes it easier to find. Anyways, oh, there's 2023. I have too many things installed. And it's this one. It is not this one. You know, either way, I assure you, it comments out that line and then it rewrites it. Wow, I'm glad we have that button because I can't remember where that configuration file is. Anyways, so just wanted to cover that. So a couple things, then I'm going to get into some questions. Actually, I'll go ahead and get into the questions now. Actually, I'll launch this while I'm at it because I'm sure someone's going to ask a question. It's sometimes confusing using a specific version of the Connect edition. How do I know if the DGN needs to be opened in 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, or now 2023? And that's an excellent question. So we do have a couple of resources for that. And Mike Robertson has answered this question that you can look at the DGN using Civil File Manager, and that'll tell you what schema it's using. Alternatively, you can open the file in a version of OpenRoads Designer or whatever software you're using, and it will tell you. Obviously, that's what we're trying to avoid here, is having to open each file and say, oh, whoop, wrong software. So Civil File Manager, I think I have to open a file to actually access that. So let's go ahead and grab that blank file again. Oh, hey, look, I'm in a different, there you are. That's the message we're looking for. That's one of my test projects that hasn't been updated to 2023 yet. So the other thing I do want to say about projects in general is that if you're ever not entirely certain if any given project should be in 1012 or 2023 or what version of the software should it be in, say you're the sub on a job or maybe you're the prime, the best way to coordinate that is to coordinate with your district project manager on what version of the software you should be using for any given project. Now that said, the CAD manual does say that any given project should be on the most recent software if possible. It's there are reasons to stick with a previous version of the if you're nearly done with a project, but generally speaking, as soon as you can get a project updated to the next version, you should, with some exceptions. Okay, so what was I talking about? Oh, right, Civil File Manager. So Civil File Manager is right here. Of course, it opens up on my other screen. And pretty intuitive tool to use. You can go to a specific file. I have no idea why I'm there. And then ever since I went digging for that configuration file, I forgot where my worksets folder is. And we are in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Everyone has this project, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1. And let's go and see. I've got this design file. Okay, so you can see it tells me the schema version, the product version. You can see it is OpenRoads Designer Update 12. Specifically 10.12.2.4 is the last version of the software that we opened up this file in. So that's how you can tell. And you can do this like by folder as well. So say you want to open up an entire folder. I just want to go, whoops, that's not the folder I want to go to. Worksets, go to that one right there. I've got plenty of files in there. And it's going to, it's because I selected folder and not folder plus subfolders. So let's go to the actual folder that has some files in it. If you didn't expect bloopers and outtakes during one of my webinars, then you're in the wrong webinar. There we are. Okay, so you can see that in this case, I've got these files, and you can view file summary. It's going to show you that's from 10.11. That's an old file that I pulled in there for some reason. And so there you go. You can see the different. Now, this does also give you the option to upgrade your files to the next version of the software or whatever version of the software you're running. That does give you that option. Bear in mind that updating your files, you also still need to update the feature definitions and element templates, and yes, do that in that order. Okay. Next question, is the local C worksets folder required? I've seen this before where this was used specifically for quantity calculations, but actual project files were kept on a remote server or project-wise. Mike Robertson does mention that we are doing a webinar on project-wise managed workspaces on November 14th, but the short answer is you need to use project-wise Drive. That is a tongue twister. With your worksets for FDOT applications to work correctly. Workspaces can be managed, but worksets are required to use project-wise Drive. So another thing that I want to point out about this is if we're talking about a non-project-wise workspace, if you're managing your files in some other manner and they're on a server or they're local, whichever you choose, it doesn't have to be C worksets. It doesn't have to be local. I could have a standalone local workstation installation, but still have all of my worksets on a server. In fact, I could have my worksets on a server and have my worksets folder on a server and actually have my worksets somewhere else. So what I mean by that is you can do that, but you have to do some configuration changes on the workset level. I've done this before in a presentation, but I just kind of want to step you through it. So say, for example, imagine these folders are not here, and all I have is these configuration files, and it says C worksets FDOT. This is my worksets folder, but these folders could actually be stored on a server somewhere as long as each of these individual configuration files was edited and the variable was added. It's underbar use station underbar work set route, I believe, is the variable. Don't quote me on that. I can find it if anyone needs to do this. You can put a ticket in, and I'll show you how to put a ticket in later. But what you basically have to do is edit that configuration to tell OpenRoads Designer or the other applications where that work set is located on the server. What'll happen is you launch OpenRoads Designer, it will locate that this is your work sets folder. It says, well, this is my work sets folder right here, FDOT subfolder under work sets, and it'll read the configuration. It'll then read the configuration and say, oh, but the actual work set route, which is this is your work set route. This is located on a server. And the reason why I went on that entire explanation is because you mentioned some people use the local work sets folder only for running quantities. And that's a symptom of a work set that has not been configured to be in a non-default location. That means your actual work set folder in those scenarios must be that local folder. It must be configured that way, and that you're actually storing your projects elsewhere and working on them elsewhere. And that indicates that the software was essentially not installed correctly. But either way, it can be done intentionally, but you have to edit that configuration file to do it. And when you do that, you don't have to use that local work sets location for quantities. It will then be perfectly fine to run quantities on the server, but you have to reconfigure that configuration file because some of the pathing is hard-coded. So it's going to pull that variable to locate your work sets folder. And if it's not being told that it's somewhere else, it's going to try to look local for your quantities. And that's when everything goes haywire. So that's why I explained the full story of that is that if you're running quantities and that's a problem because of the location, you can actually configure yourself around that. Let's see. How do you change the configuration setting if it's installed incorrectly? Mike gives a great answer. The best answer is to submit a support request so we can walk you through it, because every situation is different. When something is installed incorrectly, it might be something that can be configured to fix. It might be something where a reinstallation needs to happen. That's something that we can advise you on the best route to go. Because it would be a case-by-case basis on what constitutes a installation that was done incorrectly that needs to be reconfigured. But to tell you what I guess I'll go ahead and tell you this stuff. So a couple of places where your variables are stored. Again, this is a case-by-case scenario because it could be that something's configured incorrectly and it's not working as expected because of, well, again, case by case. But just to let you know where things are located, if you open up your system environment variables and you look at your system variables, you'll see that there is a FDOT Worksets 2023. That is where your Worksets folder is located. You'll then notice there's an FDOT Organization 2023. That's where your actual installation is located. So, say during the installation of a client server installation, you accidentally pointed the client installation to the wrong location for the server. You could theoretically come back here and edit this variable and point it to the right location. Say you got your worksets folder set incorrectly during installation. You can then change that here. But you also need to go into the registry and take a look at the registry values. Your registry values are located under HKey Local Machine Software FDOTConnect 2023, a perfectly logical place for those variables to be. You also have an organization variable or value entry, I guess they're called registry entries, and a worksets location. You need to change the worksets and organization. If you're going to change the worksets and organization, you need to do it in both the system environment variables as well as the registry. So you see how it could potentially be easier just to run an uninstall and reinstall. just as a suggestion in some situations. Let's see. Next question. We've got some great questions today, guys. Change the configuration. Good. As previously mentioned, if the F and I letters don't show up correctly, and I can't read it, let's see, do I need to reinstall the software? Potentially not. I have found about 75% of the time, if the F and I letters don't show up correctly in that blank file, if it's indicating that there's a resource issue, it's something that can probably be changed either by just fixing a variable somewhere, opening a project correctly, or launching the software correctly. About 75% of the time, it's what I like to refer to as a training issue. I don't believe in user error. I only believe in training opportunities. So a lot of times, if it's missing, it's something that's being launched incorrectly. Okay, using ORD release 3 inside ProjectWise Drive project. The FDOT menu is not loaded. Is your workspace? And Mike asks, is your workspace in ProjectWise? Also, the FDOT menu is only available in. This dialog's too small for me. There we are. Open roads modeling. Okay, yeah. So a couple of things to note about what Mike just said there. Mike has the answer as far as ProjectWise and ProjectWise Drive. So I'll just say that. But yes, if you're in Open Roads Designer and say you're in the drawing workflow, you see I switched that up here, the top left, you're not going to see the FDOT ribbon in the drawing mode. You're going to see it if you're in Survey. You'll see the FDOT Survey tab for survey stuff. And if you're in Open Roads Modeling, that FDOT tab will populate. If you change your workflow to Geospatial, you're not going to have the FDOT tab. If you're in Drawing and Utilities, we do have an FDOT tab in Drawing and Utilities, Drainage and Utilities. Yes, we do have an FDOT tab there. We have one in Survey and Open Roads Modeling, but if you're in Reality Modeling, you're not going to find one. So just to reiterate that, there are 3 locations for various FDOT tabs: Open Roads Modeling, Drainage and Utilities, and Survey. And that's in Open Roads Designer. It's different in Open Bridge Modeler and Open Bridge Designer. You're going to find that under Open Bridge Modeling, that workflow. What about on ProjectWise? Says Ed, the answer to that is Mike Robertson has you covered on any information, any questions you have about ProjectWise. Let's see.
Yeah, just made that one expounded upon.
Oh, do you
about ProjectWise?
Would you like to talk about ProjectWise a little bit, Mike?
Well, officially we don't support it. Unofficially, Bentley supports our workspace inside ProjectWise. So some of those questions, really, we just have to take them offline because it's very specific questions, and we're going to have a session on that November 14th.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. So I do want to talk about then in these situations where we need to take these conversations offline, which actually it's still an online conversation. I'll show you how to do that because we have a new method for contacting the CAD office that we'd love to get people to use more and utilize. It's been really helpful for us. Let's see. I have users that are asking, can I add a descriptor after the FDOT project number? I've been saying no because it adds too many characters and complicates the configuration variables. Yet I see in your demo you have, I add descriptors. Okay, so you are correct. I don't recommend adding descriptors. It's really great when you can have just the FPID number. Again, this is something we're not necessarily policing on, other people's machines. If that's what you're doing at your firm, and you're adding descriptors, cool, I guess, as long as it ends up being delivered with the FPID number as the project folder. But generally speaking, it'll save you a lot of grief by not adding descriptors at the end of your FPID number. Why do I have them on my machine? Because I work in support and testing, and do as I say, don't do as I do, right? I have some bad habits that would not fly in a production environment because I work in support and testing. So bear that in mind, that sometimes you'll see things on my machine that you probably shouldn't be doing with your software just because I do things for um, functionality's sake when I'm working with data sets. So I might have like 3 copies of the same data set and be doing different things with it. Or I'm not creative enough to come up with a new FPID number, so I just tack on a descriptor at the end. So that's why you see that on my machine. But yeah, typically I don't recommend having a descriptor at the end. Okay, let's see. Okay.
I see the one on the print organizer, Matt,
Yes,
not
I'm reading
printing
that.
correctly. I know what it is, but you probably know that, where to put
Uh,
it.
I'm going to go ahead and I'll jump on that, and if I'm wrong, then you can correct me. What if the F and I display correctly on the blank DGN and all of your files, but when printing from print organizers, some letters following the lowercase f don't print? Okay, so I recall that being an issue in 10.11 and possibly early 10.12, where print organizer, they changed it so that it needed to be forced to run in our workspace. It was a change between those two. And we did fix that, but I have seen it occasionally since then. Mike, do you have any further information, or was that the one?
That was the one.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, there's in some of the software, it was after 10.10 they changed the way Print Organizer was launching and configuring the workspace, and so we had to actually add some additional variables to it. So if you're not getting the kind of prints you want from Print Organizer, but it's working in single print mode, double check what version of the software you're running. If you're running 2023 and it's doing that still, please let me know. I would love to troubleshoot that and figure out what could possibly be going on. But it's definitely a configuration issue, because what it's doing is it's finding itself in Print Organizer mode and it's not loading the workspace to do those prints. Let's see. Joe says you can edit a config file to show a descriptor of the work set. That might help. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I'm going to have to read up more about that because I don't know how to do that off the top of my head, but Joe is absolutely correct. There are ways to add additional information in the configuration file so that you can differentiate between work sets and have more digestible information about each work set. That's great. Okay, so I think I've gone through all the questions so far. Feel free to continue typing questions into that question answer dialog. We will be compiling the questions and answers for a Q&A document that will be posted along with, again, the recording of this video. But I do want to go to our website real quick and show you a couple of things. Boom. Okay, great. All right. So I mentioned previously, under downloads, we've got a couple of things to look at. We do have our software archive page, but here's that current supported versions link. So again, I went to the website. Ooh, I went to CAD downloads in case I went and did that too fast. Okay. And then current supported versions. And then you see I've got our Autodesk software that's supported, and then the Bentley CAD platform. And you can see all of those numbers there and compare that to what you have. Okay, that is available to you from the software downloads page. Another thing I want to make you aware of is CAD support request. We have implemented ServiceNow as our support ticket tracking system. I've mentioned this before in a couple of webinars, but I do want to mention it again because a lot of us are still receiving direct phone calls. I get about 5 or 6 direct phone calls a day on top of other stuff. So what we would really like for everyone to do, because this makes it so much easier for us to track the tickets and provide support for you, is if you go to CAD support request, it's going to take you to a ServiceNow portal. And if you are a external consultant, you want to click on the Use External Login. It's going to ask you for your user ID, and then you hit submit, and it'll ask you for a password. If you don't have a username and password yet for ServiceNow, which I imagine quite a few of you do not, clicking on the register is going to ask for your first name, last name, email address, and who you work for. You hit sign up, and it's going to send you an email to confirm your email address. It's that easy. You now have credentials to sign into ServiceNow. Okay? And when you sign into ServiceNow, it'll provide you with a really simple form to fill in to submit your support request. Let's just combine all those words. To request, and it will interact through that portal with you. It's really easy for us to do these tickets that way. So that's what we'd really like everyone to do. So again, if you had one of those questions that we want to take offline, then go to that link. And again, that's located under CAD Support Request right here on our web page. Okay, it's also located in the software. If you go to CAD links, you'll find Request CAD Support External. If you are an FDOT employee working in one of the districts and you select Request CAD Support Internal, that's going to take you to the internal CAD Support request form. It looks almost identical to the external one. The only difference is it's using our internal, inward-facing ServiceNow portal. So external and internal, great ways to get support. What other questions are there? If you have a further question, please take a minute to type it into that dialogue, and I'll be glad to answer them. In the meanwhile, I think I've covered everything that you should know about FDOTConnect 2023 installation, configuration, and basic troubleshooting. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put that ticket in, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Okay. Okay, something about the descriptor thing that was mentioned. Yeah, let's, I wonder how that works. Let me take a look at the config file, see if we can figure that out together while I wait for additional questions. And I will say, if I can't figure it out today, that when we compile the question answer document, I'll go ahead and make sure that I include some information about what Joe said about the configuration descriptor. Yeah. I don't know. So sometimes these variables are already in the configuration file, and sometimes they're not, and you have to add them. Below alignment, not necessary. So I don't immediately see it in here. I'll do some research and make sure that I include information about that in the Q&A PDF. What other questions do you have? Okay, great. Again, oh, hang on. It's only suggesting editing the workset config file that points to the actual workset. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Why doesn't Print Organizer display utility symbology correctly when printing? That's for the exact same reason that we were talking about earlier with Print Organizer not loading the resources fully. So they changed something somewhere along the way between 10.10 and 10.11, or maybe it was 10.11 and 10.12. I don't recall exactly when it was changed. But Print Organizer does not automatically load the active workspace as its configuration for printing. So we had to change some variables to force Print Organizer to work in our workspace when it launches. So it's essentially like, imagine if it was launching a separate instance of Open Roads Designer or of Open Bridge when you launch Print Organizer. What's happening in that other instance of the application, the sort of virtual instance, is it needs a workspace to work with to grab those resources and print. And if it's not forced to use the FDOT workspace, it's going to default to the default workspace, and it's going to not be able to access the FDOT resources. So that's what's happening with Print Organizer when you're running it in print organizer mode now. And that's why we have to force it. And we fix those variables theoretically. So if you're experiencing that, it should be in like a later 10.11 software, or maybe 10.12. I don't recall again exactly what version we discovered the issue or fixed it in, but it's fixed in later 10.12 and in 2023. What other questions? Yeah, okay, it's 11:01 now, so we are over time. I do want to thank all of you for being here today and for great questions. These were excellent questions. Work remotely and use a VPN to connect to my server. I notice ORD can slow and hangs up quite often. Do you recommend I verify that I don't have the server version and reinstall? Wow, weird questions coming in. Reinstall the software. Okay, yeah. So if you're working on a VPN, there's two things to be aware of. If you're remote working on a VPN, if your work sets are on a server, or if your FDOT software is on a server, you are going to experience some lag. So I would check with your IT folks and confirm how your configuration is done. If you're working remotely, it's best to have work sets and workstation installation installed. Not ideal, but there are ways to get around that. There are ways to deal with file management and checking in files, even if you're working on them locally. But you want to have them working locally if you're working on a VPN remotely. Let's see. Designer settings like position mapping and sheet background not saved after closing and reopening the software. I've seen that a couple of times. I don't know. If you put in a ticket, we'll take a look at that. Feature request to just add service ticket generator in the FDOT tools menu. Like a. Okay, yeah, that'd be neat to have a client side patch, not client side patch, a client side interface for. I don't know if that's possible. That'd be neat. Make part of Workspace, Dr. Tools sent. Any word on release dates or patches related to drainage issues? Mike, do we have anything we want to say about that?
I just stuck in an answer for it.
Oh, okay.
We're working with Bentley. They're aware of it. We're testing to see if they've fixed it. We're trying to get them to basically put out another 2023 update, but we're not sure if they'll do that or not go until 2024.
Gotcha. Okay, that's the answer to that one. Okay, so as I was saying before, glad y'all spent this morning with me. I do appreciate all the great questions. I will compile them into a question and answer dialogue, question and answer PDF. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, just trying to run through this outro. And if you have questions again, feel free to submit a ticket. So thanks so much. Talk to y'all later.